The night was quiet. Too quiet. Marcus Reed, a single dad and night shift janitor, was finishing his rounds when he heard it. Unsteady footsteps in the soft groan outside the office. Through the parking lot glass, he saw her, the CEO, staggering dangerously, clearly drunk. One misstep could ruin her life, her career, maybe even end in disaster. Most people would have ignored it. Most people would have walked away, but Marcus didn't. In that moment, he had a choice. Stay invisible or save her. Marcus wasn't a hero, he was a father, a widower, a janitor, quietly living a life of responsibility. It was his routined night shift had a rhythm he had memorized. Marcus had been walking the hallways for years, mopping floors, emptying trash cans, sanitizing surfaces. But tonight, his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Lily, his 8-year-old daughter, who would be waiting for him at home with her homework scattered across the kitchen table. He had promised her a story before bedtime, and he could almost hear her voice asking, "Daddy, tell me about your day," as he rounded the corner toward the parking lot. A noise caught his attention in even footsteps. A muffled groan, the sound of something, or someone struggling. Marcus froze mid-step. The parking lot was supposed to be empty at this hour. Security cameras lined the perimeter, and the usual night guards were making their rounds on the opposite side. Still, the sounds persisted, soft, unsteady, erratic. His instincts kicked in. Something was wrong. He stepped closer, careful to stay in the shadows, and that's when he saw her. The CEO of the company, Veronica Hart, one of the most powerful women in the city, staggered near the edge of the lot. Her posture was unsteady, her heels clicking unevenly against the asphalt, and her jacket hung slightly off her shoulders. The street lights highlighted the glint of a bracelet, the subtle sway of her hair, and the small, almost imperceptible tilt of her head as she tried to regain balance. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. He knew from experience that one slip at this hour could be catastrophic. For a moment, he hesitated. A janitor approaching the CEO at night, would people think? He could get in trouble, lose his job, maybe even be blamed for overstepping boundaries. But the seconds ticked by, and the danger became more obvious. She was dangerously close to a curb where cars sometimes sped by, and the slight slope of the pavement made each step unpredictable. His mind raced, calculating the worst-case scenarios. One fall could result in a twisted ankle, a concussion, or worse, a viral video of a drunk CEO stumbling into traffic. A nightmare that could destroy her career and the company's reputation overnight. Marcus's training as a father kicked in. He thought of Lily, fragile in her innocence, relying on him to keep her safe, and he realized, in that moment, that this woman, powerful, untouchable, commanding in boardrooms, needed him just as much as Lily did. The choice was simple, though terrifying. Intervene and risk everything, or stay back and watch a disaster unfold. Steeling himself, he moved closer, keeping his voice low and steady. "Señora Hart, you're going to fall," he called softly, but firmly. Her head turned slightly, surprise flashing in her eyes, but the unsteady sway made it impossible for her to respond. Marcus didn't hesitate. He extended a hand, keeping a careful distance, ready to support her without alarming her or anyone watching. Each step he took toward her was a battle against fear, against doubt, and against the invisible walls that society had built around his position. In that single moment, the janitor and the CEO, two people from entirely different worlds, collided in a space of danger and trust. Marcus Reed, a man often overlooked and underestimated, was about to step into a role far bigger than mopping floors. He was about to become the protector of a life, the quiet guardian who would change the course of events with nothing but courage, instinct, and a steady heart. Marcus approached slowly, his hand extended, voice calm but firm. "Ms. Hart, let me help you." His words were almost lost in the night, but they carried weight. The CEO wavered, blinking rapidly, trying to process that someone had noticed her struggle. Power, wealth, and influence often created invisible barriers around her. No one usually saw her like this, vulnerable, human, exposed. Yet here he was, a janitor, reaching out, not to judge or lecture, but to save. He stepped closer, moving with precision, each footfall measured so as not to startle her. "Careful," he said. "You're too close to the curb." She tried to focus, her high heels wobbling on the asphalt. Marcus's hand steadied her arm gently, the right balance of support without overstepping. His mind raced, considering every angle cars could appear at any moment. Someone could witness this and misinterpret the situation. Yet, all of that faded in the face of immediate danger. Veronica's eyes met his, confusion evident in their depth. For a moment, the boardroom titan vanished, replaced by a woman relying on a stranger to keep her upright. Marcus could see it, the mixture of embarrassment, hesitation, and relief flicker across her features. He didn't speak again, letting his actions do the talking. With patience and careful guidance, he navigated her away from the street, toward the relative safety of the office's side entrance. As they walked, Marcus's mind shifted between concern and reflection. He thought about Lily, about the night he spent reading bedtime stories, about the lessons his late wife taught him. Integrity, courage, responsibility. He realized this was one of those moments where all of those lessons converged into a single, urgent decision. To act. To protect. To step up when no one else would. The CEO's balance faltered again. Marcus instinctively adjusted, keeping her upright. "Almost there," he murmured. Each word was measured. Steady, a soft anchor in the chaotic uncertainty. She seemed to understand instinctively that panicking would make things worse. Slowly, carefully, Marcus guided her to a safer spot, avoiding the wet patches and uneven pavement that could easily turn the night into tragedy. Finally, they reached a small, secluded alcove near the building. "Is the service in trance?" Veronica leaned against the wall for a moment, exhaling sharply, trying to compose herself. Marcus stepped back slightly, giving her space, his chest heaving from a mixture of adrenaline and tension. No one had thanked him yet. No one had noticed his bravery, but in that instant, it didn't matter. The crisis was avoided, and for Marcus, that was enough. He realized then that courage was often silent, unnoticed, and yet it had the power to save a life, to prevent disaster, to make a difference when no one else could. That night, Marcus Reed wasn't just a janitor. He was a protector, a guardian, and a man who had made the choice to act when everything was at stake. Marcus couldn't relax. Even though the immediate danger was averted, the night was far from over. Veronica Hart, still swaying slightly, leaned on him for balance. The parking lot was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the pavement like silent watchers. Cars occasionally passed, their headlights cutting sharp lines through the darkness. Marcus had to anticipate every movement, every step, ensuring no misstep could lead to a fall or public embarrassment. Every shadow seemed alive. He kept one hand lightly on her back, guiding her away from the edge, while the other subtly checked for obstacles. Trash cans, wet spots, uneven pavement teats, a potential hazard. He thought of Lily and remembered how careful he was when guiding her across streets. This was no different. His training as a parent and his instinct to protect were now magnified by the stakes. Veronica's breathing was uneven. She muttered something under her breath, probably an apology or an embarrassed excuse. Marcus didn't respond. Words wouldn't help. Movement would. They reached a section of the lot where cars were parked in tight rows. A misjudged step here could be disastrous heels caught between wheels, slipping on oil spots, or tripping over curbs. Marcus slowed his pace, adjusting his grip to keep her steady. He realized how fragile appearances were. The CEO, the woman, commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, was entirely human in this moment. Vulnerable, fearful, and utterly reliant on someone she barely knew. Marcus felt a strange weight settle on him, not fear, but responsibility. The world outside the parking lot didn't matter right now. This was about safety, about protecting a life that could be irrevocably changed by a single stumble. As they navigated past the last row of cars, Marcus's heart raced. Each step was a calculated move, a silent dance between caution and urgency. He could feel Veronica leaning slightly into him, trusting him instinctively. Truce to deed and tea take lightly. It reminded him of his daughter's small hand in his, trusting him to guide her, protect her, and keep her safe. Finally, they reached a quiet corner near the building's side door. Marcus stepped back slightly, letting her regain her footing. She steadied herself, drawing a shaky breath, and glanced at him with something he hadn't expected. Gratitude, awareness, and a flicker of respect. Marcus's chest tightened. No one had seen this. No one would know the courage it took to act. But the satisfaction of keeping someone safe, even temporarily, was enough to fuel his sense of purpose. He watched her for a moment, ensuring she could make it inside safely. The night had tested him, pushed him to act beyond his role, beyond his status as a janitor, and he realized something. Life often doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes you step up, and sometimes stepping up is all that matters. Finally, Marcus guided Veronica to the service entrance of the building, a small, dimly lit alcove that offered relative privacy and safety. The noise of the city was faint here, muffled by the building's massive walls, leaving only the low hum of the HVAC system and the distant echo of traffic. Marcus paused for a moment, letting her regain her balance. She leaned against the cool brick wall, catching her breath, and for the first time, he allowed himself to assess her condition. Her hair was slightly disheveled, and a few strands clung to a damp forehead. Her jacket was half off her shoulder, and her high heels had left faint scuff marks on the concrete. She looked vulnerable, exposed, far removed from the image of the composed CEO who dominated boardrooms during the day. Marcus realized that no one else knew this side of her, the fragile human behind the facade of power, and no one else would have stopped to help. "Miss Hart," Marcus said gently, "I can make sure you get inside safely. Then, maybe sit down. Have some water." His voice was calm, patient, carrying a quiet authority that belied his position as a janitor. She blinked at him, confusion mixing with gratitude, as though she couldn't quite reconcile this stranger's care with her own expectations of the world. Slowly, she nodded. Marcus guided her toward the stairwell entrance, ensuring each step was secure. He thought about how life had prepared him for moments like this, the careful attention to detail, the quiet vigilance, the instinct to act without expectation. All those years of being a single father, of rebuilding his life after loss, had given him a perspective few could understand. Protecting someone wasn't about recognition. It was about responsibility. Inside, the stairwell was dim but secure. Marcus stayed close, guiding her hand to the railing, monitoring each step. They reached the lower level, and he directed her to a waiting elevator. She leaned lightly against him, exhausted, murmuring a soft thank you that he barely caught over the hum of the machinery. It wasn't grandiose, and it wasn't public, but it was real. Marcus let her step inside the elevator first, giving her a reassuring nod. The doors closed with a soft click, leaving him in the quiet hallway. A strange mixture of adrenaline and calm washed over him. The crisis had passed, and yet the weight of what he had done lingered. He hadn't sought recognition. He hadn't expected a reward. He had acted because it was the right thing to do, because instinct and conscience demanded it. As he returned to his cleaning duties, Marcus reflected on the night. The world outside was still busy, unaware of the quiet heroism that had just unfolded. For him, the satisfaction of knowing he had prevented a disaster was enough. He passed familiar colleagues, nodding politely, keeping his focus on the tasks ahead. He wondered if she would acknowledge him, if the CEO would even remember the stranger who had quietly saved her. Hours passed. The office buzzed with meetings, calls, and corporate deadlines. Marcus performed his duties with care, sweeping floors and emptying trash, but his mind kept drifting to the memory of the previous night. Then, he saw her, Veronica Hart, standing near the window of her executive office, gazing out at the city with the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her. Marcus paused briefly, uncertain. Would she pretend it never happened? Would she brush off the incident as a mere accident, a drunken misstep unworthy of acknowledgement? To his surprise, she did not. As he continued his rounds, Veronica's assistant approached him discreetly. "Miss Hart asked me to thank you," she said softly. "She wanted you to know she remembers what you did." Marcus felt a warmth spread through Hema, mixture of relief, pride, and quiet satisfaction. No fanfare. No public acknowledgement, just a subtle recognition from someone who mattered more than anyone else in the building. Later, Marcus returned to the executive floor for routine maintenance. This time, Veronica met him at the elevator. She gave a small, sincere nod and spoke in a quiet voice that carried more weight than any boardroom speech. "I appreciate what you did last night." You didn't have to step in, but you did. Marcus swallowed, unsure how to respond. Praise from anyone else might have seemed awkward or empty, but from her, it felt meaningful. I just did what anyone would, he said, modestly. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. Not anyone, she said. Most people wouldn't. Most people walk by, ignore it, pretend it's not their business. You acted. You saved me, and you did it without expecting anything in return. The interaction was brief, but for Marcus, it meant everything. Recognition wasn't about titles, paychecks, or status. It was about being seen, understood, and respected, and in that moment, he felt seen not as a janitor, not as a single father, but as a person capable of courage and integrity. The office buzzed around them, oblivious to the subtle but powerful moment. Marcus had walked away with a renewed sense of purpose, feeling a quiet bond forming between him and the CEO, a bond built on trust, bravery, and shared humanity. After his shift, Marcus returned home to Lily, the small hand waiting for him at the door, full of energy and innocence. Her excitement about school, her drawings, and her little world provided a sharp contrast to the tension and danger he had faced the night before. He knelt to her level, listening, laughing softly, and for a moment, the weight of responsibility lifted, replaced by the simple joy of being a father. That night, as Lily slept, Marcus sat by the window, reflecting on everything that had happened. He replayed the events over and over: the stumbling steps in the parking lot, the careful guidance, the subtle gratitude from the CEO. His mind wandered to the lessons his late wife had taught him. Courage, ISNT. Always loud. It doesn't always seek attention. True courage shows up in moments of quiet choice, in stepping forward when no one else will. He thought about how different life had become in a single night. Before, he was invisible, a background figure, a man known for cleaning floors rather than influencing outcomes. Now, he had directly impacted someone's life and, perhaps, indirectly, the future of a company. But more importantly, he realized that heroism wasn't about recognition. It was about action, responsibility, and integrity. Yet, even as he reflected, he couldn't shake a sense of caution. In high-stakes worlds, actions have consequences, and the powerful rarely forget those who intervene in unexpected ways. Marcus knew that his choice might ripple further than he could imagine, that the quiet acknowledgement from Veronica was only the beginning of a story far larger than a single night. He resolved to be ready for whatever came next. If protecting Lily had taught him anything, it was that life demanded vigilance, courage, and preparation. And if protecting someone else's life could prevent disaster, he was ready to step up again, quietly, responsibly, and with unwavering resolve. Marcus finally stood, looking out at the quiet street, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. He whispered to himself, "Courage doesn't wait for permission. Neither do I." In that moment, he felt a shift, not just in his role in the world, but in how he saw himself. Invisible no more. Marcus understood that integrity and action were his true power, and with that understanding, he knew that life, for him and Lily, would never be the same again. The day ended, but the weight of the previous night lingered in Marcus's mind. Returning home, he was greeted by Lily's excited chatter and her small, bright smile, the simple joys of life that had kept him grounded through every struggle. He tucked her into bed, listening to her soft breathing, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel peace. Yet, even in the quiet of his small apartment, his mind replayed the events at the office, every detail, every choice, every heartbeat of that tense night. He had acted without expectation, without recognition, yet the CEO's subtle acknowledgement had changed something inside him. Veronica Hart hadn't pretended to forget. She hadn't ignored him, brushed him aside, or reduced him to a title he had long accepted as limiting. Instead, she had seen him, really seen him. The janitor who was also a father, a man of courage, integrity, and quiet strength. That recognition, simple yet profound, stirred a sense of purpose in Marcus that he hadn't felt in years. Sitting by the window, Marcus reflected on how fragile life could be and how quickly it could change. One moment, he was invisible, performing routine duties in silence. The next, he was a guardian, a protector, someone whose choices had real consequences for others' lives. The realization was humbling, but it also awakened something inside him. A renewed determination to face challenges head-on, to act when it mattered most, and to never let fear or self-doubt dictate his actions again. As the city lights flickered in the distance, Marcus knew the world was unpredictable and often unforgiving, but he also knew that courage and integrity could carve a path through chaos. The bond formed with Veronica, built on trust, respect, and shared humanity, was only the beginning. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring new challenges, scrutiny, perhaps even danger, but he understood one undeniable truth. Standing up for what is right, even when no one else would, changes everything. Marcus leaned back, taking a deep breath. He whispered softly to himself, "I did the right thing, and I'll do it again, no matter what comes next." Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the quiet heroism that had unfolded. But Marcus didn't need anyone else to understand. For him, for Lily, for those whose lives he could touch, the night's choices had made all the difference. And with that understanding, he finally allowed himself to feel that pride, purpose, and the unwavering knowledge that some acts, though unseen by the world, resonate far beyond the moment they occur.